This session, which is an exciting session really, we will look at Dajjal's strategy, how he seeks to establish his rule, over the world, and how he uses money and the market and the economy as his most dangerous weapon for achieving his rule over the world. At the end of this session at 6 o'clock, we'll break for 1 hour. And I will sit at the back and probably eat a hamburger or eat a sandwich or something, and sign your books for you, inshallah. Don't expect me to be able to spend the whole 1 hour answering questions, because I'm going to lose my voice. All right? I'm going to lose my voice and I may not be able to do the last session. So I'll sit at the back and I will autograph books for you. The one that I would recommend most of all that you should get is the book on Dajjal. Dajjal, the Quran, and the beginning of history. And we do have some copies still left. After that, the next most important book is Jerusalem in the Quran, because this is the introduction to Islamic eschatology. Then there is Suratul Kahf in the modern age. Remember that Suratul Kahf is the surah par excellence of the whole Quran, of eschatology or Akhirul Zaman. So, the book on Dajjal, Jerusalem in the Quran, Suratul Kahf in the modern age, and my last book, which is a small one, on the Quran, the Great War, and the West. When we dealt in the previous session, we have this echo. When we dealt in the previous section with Dajjal's one eye, and we talked about epistemology, it's a very important subject. And the response from the Quran is in Suratul Kahf with Khidr alayhi salam. But I didn't have the time to introduce you to Khidr. But I have a little booklet which you can finish in 1 hour on In Search of Khidr's Footprints in Akhirul Zaman. And I advise you to read that to understand Dajjal blind eye. Now then, for our session today, the third session on Dajjal's mountain of bread. Our Prophet said, alayhi salatu wassalam, that Dajjal will come with a mountain of bread, indicating material prosperity, money, wealth. And he said that people will follow him for his bread. And that is exactly what we're seeing today. And an American president has to try to build a wall to stop them from coming for the bread. And yet he says he's a Christian. And a Christian, a rich Christian, he builds a wall to keep the poor from coming. That's Christianity today. How come we reached this stage? We never had this before in history. There were always poor and there were always rich in history. But never before in history did we have this phenomenon of large numbers of people deserting their homes, deserting their cities, deserting their country, everybody on the road to where the bread is located. How do we explain this? The answer is that this is because of Dajjal. But I don't think Imran Khan studied this at Oxford. No. And he has his ministers of government, he has his cabinet, he has all of his advisors, and he doesn't have one, not even one in his team who could teach him the Quran, not one in his team. That's a disappointment, Imran Khan, that's a disappointment. We expected more from you. When we turn to the Quran, we find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down the very last revelation in the Quran. No more after this, this is the last. And in that very last revelation in the Quran, he came back to a subject which was previously in the Quran on riba. Riba is now translated by a difficult word, usury. And the word usury has been relegated to the museum. So if you want to get the word usury, you got to go to a museum and take it out, like the name Constantinople. That's the status of usury today. We in Islam know it by the name riba. And in the very last revelation, Allah returned to the subject of riba, indicating He's sending a message to us that herein lies the greatest danger of all, here in the subject of riba. And in that very last revelation, He declared war. This is the harshest language in the Quran, to declare war. Allah and His Messenger have declared war on the moneylender. And the moneylender of the world today is the modern West. They have created the banking system. And if you read John Perkins' book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, you will get the evidence that when they lend you money, it's not always for them to become richer. Sometimes they lend you money in order to enslave you. Yes. Why is riba prohibited? And what's the link between riba and Dajjal? I mentioned earlier that in a healthy economy, wealth circulates through the economy. And so one day for me and one day for you. But when an economy is based on riba, as the economy of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, Islamic Republic of Pakistan, when economy is based on riba, then wealth will no longer circulate through the economy. Wealth will circulate only amongst the wealthy. And so the rich will remain forever rich. And the poor will be imprisoned in permanent poverty. Is that so difficult to understand? From the day Pakistan was born to this day, every government of Pakistan has failed. Yes. Because the rich of Pakistan have remained rich and the poor have remained poor all through these years. And the present government is most certainly going to fail because they don't have a clue. They don't have a clue. You could provide some temporary relief to the poor with charity, state-sponsored charity, subsidies and so on. But that's not a solution to the problem, that's a temporary relief. You have to bring structural change if you want wealth to circulate through the economy. Why has Allah prohibited riba? He says in the Quran, وَمَا آتَيْتُم مِّن رِبًا لِيَرْبُوَ فِي أَمْوَالِ النَّاسِ فَلَا يَرْبُو عِندَ اللَّهِ وَمَا آتَيْتُم مِّن زَكَاةٍ تُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَ اللَّهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُضْعِفُونَ. He makes a contrast between riba and charity. So what is the lesson being taught? Why is riba haram? He makes a contrast between riba and charity. He doesn't tell us why. But when you think, and it's a good thing to think, you know, you then realize that in an act of charity, which is a sincere act of charity, not like, you know, aid as a form of imperialism, you give and you take nothing in return. That's charity. And Allah is saying that riba is the opposite of charity. That they take and they give nothing in return. And so eventually Africa will be miserably poor and Europe will be filthy rich. They take and they give nothing in return. But Allah gives a second contrast between riba and business. Because they say money lending is a legitimate form of business, money lending on interest. إِنَّمَا الْبَيْعُ مِثْلُ الرِّبَا إِنَّمَا الْبَيْعُ مِثْلُ الرِّبَا. And Allah responds and He says, وَأَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَا. Allah has made business halal and He has made riba haram. So now we have a contrast over there between charity and riba and here between business and riba. What is the message being taught? The answer is, lending money on interest does not qualify as business. Why? What is the definition of a business transaction? Answer: a business transaction is one in which you can either make a profit or you can suffer a loss. Is that so difficult to understand? A business transaction is one in which you embrace risk. And as a consequence of embracing risk, you can either make a profit or you can suffer a loss. That's business. The money lender does not want to embrace risk. The money lender wants to be immunized from loss. He wants to make only profit and he must not ever suffer loss. When you lend money on interest and you have a mortgage to protect your interest, Shylock wanted a pound of flesh. Huh? You know about that story? No? You don't know about a pound of flesh? Are you living in Britain? If you're living in Britain and you don't know about the money lender's pound of flesh, were you eating plenty biryani and go home and sleep? It is Shakespeare, who is one of the greatest sheikhs ever in Britain, Shakespeare. It is Shakespeare's Merchant of Venice. Merchant of Venice. That is an excellent book on riba. So, the money lender does not want to suffer loss. He must only make a profit. So he assumes and he accepts no risk. He lends you the money on the condition that you must repay him with an additional amount. And if you do not repay him with the additional amount, he has to have something mortgaged so he can get back his money. And Allah says this is not business. When you embrace risk, you do business, then Allah can intervene in the market, in the economy, and He can take from some and give to others. So one day for me and one day for you. And so Allah in His wisdom can cause money to circulate through the economy. It is not the function of the state, the Soviet Union, the socialist governments. It is not the function of the state to cause wealth to circulate through the economy. That destroys the economy and that provides for corruption. That's why the Soviet Union collapsed. No. It is for the market, which must be a free and a fair market. And when you enter into the market, you embrace risk. And there is no favoritism in an Islamic market. A Hindu suffers no disadvantage in a Muslim market. The market does not favor a Muslim over a Hindu. The market does not favor a Muslim over a Jew. Even if you're waging war on me, we are enemies, but in the market we are equal. That is Islam. And so when you come into the market and you do business and you embrace risk, then Allah can take from you and give to others. And as a consequence, wealth can circulate through the economy. But when the economy is based on riba, then you've closed that door and Allah says, I will not open it. Allah says, I will not change the condition of a people, regardless of how deplorable it may be. Inna Allah la yughayyiru ma bi qawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim. And so the door will remain shut, and the money lender will be able to lend on interest. And as a consequence of that, wealth will not circulate through that economy. And the poor of Pakistan will remain poor until the end of time, although they say they are Islamic Republic. This is not the only form of riba. This is not the only form of riba. This is the banking system. And the banking system which is taking control of the world today has come from the modern Western world. They control the banking system. And tomorrow, the central banks will all be gone. There'll be only one central bank for all of mankind. So goodbye to Bank of England. Goodbye to State Bank of Pakistan. One central bank for all of mankind and one currency for all of mankind, and they control it. And that is slavery. That is slavery. I don't know if Imran Khan knows it. But that's not the only form of riba. The Prophet said, if you meet a man coming to the market to sell his goods, and you buy his goods from him before he enters the market. He has a truckload of apples. If I were in Pakistan, I'd say mangoes. And he wants to sell his truckload of apples. And in the market, there is a market price, the wholesale price. But he does not know the wholesale price. And you meet him outside of the market, and you buy his truckload of apples from him. And when he enters the market, then he learns that he could have gotten a better price in the market. That, said the Prophet, is riba. You exploited his ignorance of the market price to rip him off. That's an American expression. Good one. An American expression. To rip him off. In other words, a transaction which is based on deception, in consequence of which it gives you a profit or a gain or an advantage to which you are not justly entitled. That's the elegant way of saying a rip-off. That's riba. And that's what Dajjal used. Oh yes. I want to introduce you to the greatest rip-off. Even Santa Claus can't match it. The greatest rip-off since Adam alayhi salam set foot on it. And the muftis of Islam are going to have to answer on Judgment Day. Oh yes. Allah provided in the Quran money. Oh yes. In the Quran the word dinar is there. Yes, it is in the Quran, dinar. And a dinar in the Quran is a gold coin. And the word dirham is in the Quran. And a dirham in the Quran is a silver coin. So gold and silver are money. And all through history, all people, every civilization used gold and silver as money. Until Dajjal struck with the modern West. In Medina, if there was a shortage of gold and silver in the market, they would use dates as money. Dates. And so the Prophet said, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam, he spoke of a transaction in which you are exchanging gold for gold, silver for silver, wheat for wheat, barley for barley, dates for dates, and salt for salt. And he said, if this is a transaction of like for like, it must be equal for equal. It must be hand to hand, meaning a cash transaction. Otherwise it would be riba. We come back to it in a moment. Don't look so worried. What is common to all six, if you have your thinking cap on? Gold, silver, wheat, barley, dates, and salt. What is common to all six is that they were all used as money. So whenever there was a shortage of gold and silver, if dates was in abundant supply in the market, they would use dates as money. So if you are in Indonesia, Java, if you drive across the island of Java, it's beautiful. Hundreds of miles of lush green plantations of rice. Yeah. Dazzle your eyes. It's a rice bowl. So if you are in Indonesia and you have a shortage of gold and silver, would you use dates as money? Oh no, you use rice. And if you're in my neighbor, Cuba, I'm in Trinidad, he's there in Cuba, and you stop smoking tobacco, because Fidel stopped him before he died. And you have a shortage of gold and silver in Cuba. What would you use as money? Would you use dates? No, you'd use sugar. Cuba is a sugar bowl. Okay? So what is common to all of these which are used as money is that money always had intrinsic value, meaning that the value of the money is inside the money. Is that so difficult to understand? Well, this is your religion. This is your book, the Quran. This is your Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is the money which he used. This is Sunnah money. And so long as you use money with intrinsic value, the only way someone can come and rob you and rip you off is if he takes his hand and puts it in your pocket and take out your money. Yeah? That's the only way. He can't do it by proxy. No. What Dajjal did was to take out real money from the market and prohibit its use. The Articles of Agreement of the International Monetary Fund came out of the Bretton Woods Accord. And Bretton Woods Conference was held in 1944 when the Second World War was coming to an end. And the victorious people, those who won the war, they met in Bretton Woods to establish a new monetary system. Monetary system? We never had this word in history. There was no monetary system. There were no monetary economics, no. You only had one money. You had gold and silver. But then they started to change, and they call it the gold standard, that they will replace the gold and silver with something else, and you have to redeem it. That's called the gold standard. And now in Bretton Woods, they decide we're going to have a monetary system. And in that monetary system, number one, is you've got to ban gold. Gold must not be used as money. And by extension, silver as well. Why are you banning gold? The thief will not answer you. He tells monstrous lies. He will never give you the truth. Why are you prohibiting the use of gold as money? Let me answer, because the thief will not answer. He's stolen the wealth of the world. He's filthy rich today, and he builds a wall to keep the poor out. The reason why he had to ban the use of gold is because if you have real money in the market, bogus money cannot survive. Is that so difficult to understand? The only way that bogus money can survive is if you keep real money out of the market. And so this is what Dajjal did. First of all, he banned the use of gold, and then he replaced it with paper. And at the beginning, only one paper was redeemable in gold, and that was the US dollar. And by international law, the United States was obliged to redeem US dollars for gold. At what rate? Help me somebody? 35. 35 US dollars, and I will give you 1 ounce of gold. But only governments could redeem US dollars, not Tom, Dick, and Harry. So this was a system in which the US dollar is now His Majesty, and it's made to order to allow Pax Americana to ride high, fly high. It was an unjust system. And all the other paper money in the world have their value as in relation to the US dollar. Whoever designed this system had Shaitan as his teacher. And yet the world of Islamic scholarship, the muftis, and I have to control myself really, because my anger is so great. The Darul Ulooms, the Maulanas, the Allamas, the Shuyukh and so on, they're all eating their biryani and go home to sleep. And they allow this rip-off to take place. Yeah, a bogus monetary system. But one man realized, I'm not going to talk about Ahmad Sukarno because we don't have the time, but Charles de Gaulle. And he stood up in the French National Assembly and he did what no Maulana did. Yes, all of them. May Allah keep me quiet because my anger is too great. Charles de Gaulle, General Charles de Gaulle, stood up in the French National Assembly in 1966 and he denounced the monetary system as unjust. And he decided that France will now redeem US dollars for gold as determined by international law at 35. The United States was caught by surprise. They didn't believe that anyone would come with their US dollars to get gold, because you're prohibited from using gold as money. So what are you going to use the gold for? To make earrings? The gold will just sit in the bank, in the locker doing nothing, so nobody will want to keep gold. They will use their gold to get a loan and so on, mortgage their gold. But Charles de Gaulle said, I want the gold. And that rattled the United States. And so they got rid of Charles de Gaulle. They always get rid of whoever they don't want. Sometimes they may even take an American ambassador, and the aeroplane will fall with the ambassador as well to get rid of someone. And so Charles de Gaulle denounced them. They got rid of him, but the successive governments in France kept on asking for the gold. By 1971, it was too late. Nixon could not take the risk of any other country joining the line. So in 1971, Nixon reneged on the international obligation of redeeming US dollars for gold. He said, we gave our word, but we don't have to keep our word. The Quran says when you give your word, you must keep your word. Nixon said, we gave our word, we don't have to keep our word. That's the great United States of America. And so the monetary system is now in no man's land. The US dollar is no longer backed by gold. And between 1971 and 1974, the whole system could have collapsed. But they had an ingenious leader in Henry Kissinger. And by 1974, Kissinger was able to pull off the biggest rip-off in mankind's history. What was it? Our Prophet said, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam, that the river Euphrates will uncover a mountain of gold. A mountain of the metal will come out from underneath the river. And people will fight for the gold. And 99 of those who fight for the mountain of gold will be killed. 99 out of every 100 would be killed. There's never been a war like that in history, in which 99% of combatants on one side are killed. This has to be the malhama. But the believers must not touch that gold. There are those who are persuaded that this must be understood literally, and so they're waiting for a mountain of the metal to come out from underneath the river, and I suggested to them, get a comfortable sofa. You've got a long wait ahead of you. We offered an interpretation, ta'wil, of this prophecy several years ago. And the reason why we were able to do it is because I not only studied philosophy at university and studied Islamic studies at my institute, but I also went on to study international relations at 2 universities. So I knew something about international politics, international economics, international monetary economics, and so on. So in 1974, when Kissinger went to Faisal, King Faisal, Faisal had peanuts in his head. I feel sad to say so, because Kissinger, with a US dollar which is in no man's land, it can collapse anytime, was able to persuade Faisal to agree that Saudi Arabia would sell its oil for only US dollars. Didn't Faisal think that the reason why Kissinger has come with this offer is to save the US dollar from collapse? It is no longer redeemable in gold, it has no backing from gold, and they want to use oil instead of gold to back the US dollar so it doesn't collapse. Didn't Faisal have more in his head than peanuts? Faisal agreed. And he got the Arab oil producing countries to agree, and then he got OPEC to agree. And when that happened, then the US dollar became the petrodollar. And an ocean of oil underneath the river now began to function as a mountain of gold. That's the explanation of the prophecy. Since 1974, they have now a free rein. Previously, you had to print the paper, and you had to ensure that there must be some kind of a relationship between the paper and gold. But now no more. You can print as much as you want, because there is no relationship between paper money and gold. None at all. So the United States has had a free rein since 1974 to print money and to use money and to squander money as though they're going crazy with money. The petrodollar monetary system. But our Prophet said that they're going to fight for that mountain of gold. And 2 countries recognized that this was bogus, this was fraudulent, this was unjust, and this was allowing one part of the world to make money out of thin air and to become even richer than they already were. And the other part of the world is being ripped off, like a vacuum cleaner that you clean your carpet with, and it is sucking the wealth of the world. And when Muammar Gaddafi in Libya, who understood what was going on, negotiated with the rest of Africa, let us get out of this petrodollar monetary system, and let us create a gold monetary system based on gold for Africa. And the African countries agreed with him. When France got to know about it, because it was secret, the French were terrified. If this were to succeed, the French franc would collapse. So what they did, they organized the Arab Spring, so they could use the Arab Spring as a front, a camouflage, to be able to take over Libya and finish with that plan to have a gold currency for Africa. So not only are we being ripped off, but we are not allowed to do anything to prevent the rip-off until Russia turned back to Christianity. The Soviet Union was the world's only formally established atheist state. And the Soviet Union was waging war on Christianity, killing the priests, killing the scholars. And then after 70, 80 years of communism in the Soviet Union, it collapsed overnight. And then there was a transition period of chaos, and then suddenly, like a phoenix, Russia returns to Orthodox Christianity and returns to rectitude. Today you have the Russian president is perhaps the most respected leader in the world. Compare him with Mr. Trump, there's no comparison. The Russian leaders don't pay off women before the election to keep them quiet. The Russian foreign minister is far and above superior to every other foreign minister in the world today. Yes. And so Russia decided enough is enough. And Russia decided to challenge the petrodollar monetary system. And Russia was successful in getting China on board. And China now has the world's greatest economy, surpassing the United States. So if you have China and if you have Russia together, you have a formidable team there. And they began to attack Dajjal's monetary system. Yes. The Chinese, for example, decided to tell Saudi Arabia, and the Saudis still have to reply, we are prepared to buy your oil and to pay you in Chinese yuan. But Saudi Arabia had agreed with Kissinger that oil will be sold for only US dollars. So that kept the US dollar alive and flying high. The Chinese now say, we are prepared to buy your oil and to pay you in Chinese yuan. And when we pay you in the Chinese yuan, we are prepared to redeem the Chinese yuan for gold at whatever is the market price. So the Chinese are not in violation of the International Monetary Fund. No. They're not using gold as money. Very skillful. And China is now Saudi Arabia's biggest customer. If Saudi Arabia accepts that offer, goodbye to the US dollar. Goodbye. That's why Trump had to be so careful about Adnan Khashoggi. Because the Saudis have the US economy in the palm of their hand. But there is a war which is coming. And that war is going to be fought for the mountain of gold. I made a mistake when I said that all those who fight in the war will suffer 99% killed. Hadith doesn't say that. The Hadith says that those who fight for the mountain of gold. It doesn't say those who are fighting against the mountain of gold. Those who are fighting for the mountain of gold, 99% of them will be killed. That's bad news for NATO. Bad news for NATO. Yeah. So there is a war which is coming in which the purpose, the rationale for the war is not to defend Ukraine or to take on North Korea or to win a battle in Syria for Dajjal's warriors. The rationale for the war, the purpose for the war is to protect the mountain of gold. That's why the war has to take place. My book at the back entitled The Quran, The Great War and the West, is one in which I have attempted to use several verses of the Quran to apply them to that great war. And I said to you in an earlier session that when Allah intervenes in that war, those who are going to be killed, number one on the list, will be those who are engaged in homosexuality, where a man can marry another man and get a marriage certificate. That's the Western world. And then I said number two on that list would be those who are the money lenders of the world, because Allah has declared that He's going to wage war on them. If you go to Surah Al-Rahman in the Quran, it's a very strange surah. Allah is very economical in the use of language in the Quran. Sometimes He uses only one word to make a statement, one word. So then why does He repeat one verse 31 times in one surah? فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. Could that be by accident? Or is it merely a poetic style? فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. He's addressing a people who reject the truth. A people who are on the path of falsehood. And He's saying to them that they are two people, not one. And asking them, how much more are you going to do in rejecting the truth? Who are these two people who are evil and godless and have incurred the divine anger? Who are the two? And He's knocking on the door of our mind, how many times? 31 times. I mean, you really have to be eating a lot of biryani and going home to sleep, not to wake up. Why has He done this? فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. Let us first answer, who are the two people? The Quran in Surah Al-Rahman answers when it says, يَا مَعَشَرَ الْجِنِّ وَالْإِنسِ. Allah is referring to a community of human beings who are evil, rejecting the truth, and a community of jinn who are evil, shayateen, rejecting the truth. And these two people are in alliance with each other. That's why they gave the modern scientific and technological revolution to the West. And He's saying to these two people, إِنِ اسْتَطَعْتُمْ أَن تَنْفُذُوا مِنْ أَقْطَارِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ فَانْفُذُوا لَا تَنْفُذُونَ إِلَّا بِسُلْطَانٍ. He's saying to them, if you wish to, go ahead. Go ahead with this space exploration, penetrating the stratas of the atmosphere and the depths of the earth and the oceans. And that's precisely what they did. And that brought about the scientific and technological revolution, space travel. But He ended by saying, لَا تَنْفُذُونَ إِلَّا بِسُلْطَانٍ. That your missiles will not fly unless I authorize it. Did you hear that? Your missiles will not fly. لَا تَنْفُذُونَ إِلَّا بِسُلْطَانٍ. Your missiles and your intercontinental ballistic missiles will not fly unless I authorize it. And so in the Great War, He will intervene. And if He decides no authority for you, an angel can take that missile back to sender. You send the missile to hit him, And the angel turns it around and it comes and hits you. Because there are millions of angels. Millions. And you could shoot as many missiles as you want. They could intercept them all. And Allah says in Surah Ar-Rahman, سَنَفْرُغُ لَكُمْ أَيُّهَا الثَّقَلَانِ, I'm going to deal with you, both of you who are laden with sin. I'm going to deal with you. And this is how we can deal with them, by removing the authority where they were allowed to send their missiles flying here and there. Now Allah prevents it. And then he goes on to say, وَنُرْسُلُ عَلَيْكُمْ شُوَازٌ مِّن نَارٍ وَنُحَاسٌ عَلَيْكُمْ شُوَازٌ مِّن نَارٍ وَنُحَاسٌ فَلَا تَنْتَصِرَانِ. I'm going to send against you a flash of fire, followed by smoke. A flash of fire, followed by smoke, and there'll be none to help you. And so we have come to the conclusion that modern Western civilization is going to be finished in this great war. What remains of the West will be a pathetic, pathetic figure, unable to play any role in world affairs after this war. So what's going to happen in the world of money? Is it that there'll be no more electronic money? What's going to happen? We know that Israel has already made gold and silver coins legal tender. Yes. And several states in the United States have already made gold and silver coins legal tender. What about the world of Islam? Your Mufti, your Maulana, your Sheikh, have they done anything? Huh? Other than closing the doors of the masjid to Imran. Have they done anything? We know that after the Great War, that will be the time that Israel will then make the effort, the play, for Pax Judaica to replace Pax Americana. The world will be much smaller. We know that at that time there'll be one central bank for all of mankind. I don't expect it before the Great War, I expect it after the Great War. And we know that there'll be one currency for all of mankind. So although it is difficult for me to understand how it will be possible, yet I believe there will have to be some kind of electronic system still operating after the Great War, so that this money, the one currency for all of mankind, can function electronically. Until, in the next session we come to the end of history, until that time comes when Israel no longer needs this monetary system of electronic money, cryptocurrencies, and they can return to gold and silver. The last comment I have to make is why cryptocurrencies at this time? Why Bitcoin at this time? So far, the paper currencies have all been issued by governments under the control of central banks. What is curious about cryptocurrencies is that it is not under the control of governments. It's Tom, Dick and Harry. No, I should use some other names now. I'm using Tom, Dick and Harry too often. It's under the control of individuals, all right? And if I use the names of the individual, well, they may say I'm anti-Semitic. So they have these individuals who are now issuing cryptocurrencies. It's not governments. Why are you doing this at this time? My answer is, this is part and parcel of the strategy of bringing about the demolition of the monetary system now operating, taking off its legs. Because the monetary system is based on governments, on central banks. And they want to disengage money from governments and from central banks. And so cryptocurrencies come. And cryptocurrencies and bitcoins are only a passing cloud. They're not here to stay. They are here in order to facilitate the transfer from the present monetary system to that which is to come, which will be one currency for all of mankind. And they will be the ones who will have control of it, and that makes it so much easier now for Dajjal to rule the world from Jerusalem. How should we respond? How should we respond? The first thing we should do is to study the subject. And the Prime Minister of Pakistan doesn't have anyone to teach him. When you study the subject, you then formulate strategy. And proper strategy would be that you will make a unilateral renunciation of all interest payments on loans, meaning we are not going to pay you any more interest. That's it. The money that we borrowed from you, we will repay you. That's it. But we're not going to pay you any interest. And we're not negotiating with you. We are deciding it ourselves. So unilateral. From the time you make this unilateral renunciation of all interest payments on loans, they will attack your money. And your money will soon become like the Venezuelan Bolivar. I was in Caracas. I wanted to buy a cup of coffee, Venezuelan coffee, much better than American coffee. And I didn't have any Venezuelan money with me, the Bolivar. I only had $100 US. So I wanted to change it. So someone from the Caribbean Airlines with whom I flew, Sheikh, don't change it out there, I'll change it for you. They won't give you the money. So I give it to him. He said, no, you keep your money. And I waited, and about 10 minutes later, he came with a pile of money this high. You see? Look. This high. For $100. Venezuela now probably make this high for $100. So the money has no value. The minute you decide you're taking them on, you are not paying any more interest on loans, not. They will attack your money. And the Pakistani rupee will go into a free fall like the Venezuelan Bolivar. You must have a backup plan. Your backup plan would be to make gold and silver coins legal tender, in violation of the IMF. We don't care two peanuts for you. This is Pakistan. And when you put gold and silver in the market as legal tender, where will it come from? That's why you have the market. Businessmen will find it very fast. A businessman knows when he can make money. And so you'll be able to go to the market and buy gold and silver coins with your rupees. But the more gold and silver coins you buy, the more the rupee will go down. Until eventually there'll be a mad scramble to unload the rupee before it's worthless. And then in the process, the real money will replace the bogus money in the market. Once you have the real money in the market, there is no inflation. None. When I went to Pakistan as a student in 1964, on the day of Eid, we will go and have a nice meal. Go to a hotel and have a nice meal, beef steak. And you can get a nice beef steak and a lovely dinner for Eid with 10 rupees. Yeah, 10 rupees was a lot of money. I don't know whether you could buy a matchstick with 10 rupees now. This is what happens when money loses its value. When I was 5 years of age, give me a minute more, my father bought a car. I was 5 years of age. He wanted to take me to school, but he should also take me to the market. And I am 5 years of age and I'm holding the basket and walking with my father. And I saw him buy 100 oranges in a jute bag for $1. Now, 71 years later, with $1 I cannot buy one orange. It's called inflation. And this is Dajjal's deadliest weapon of all. Inflation, with which he rules the world. He keeps your toe on the line. If you step out of line, he will attack your money with inflation and you become like Venezuela. So what do? Answer, we have to return to the Quran and Sunnah and replace the existing money with gold and silver so that there will be no inflation. Well, what do we do after that? They will come and invade your country. The Marines will land in Pakistan. India will attack. Then you fight. You fight and Allah will be on your side, inshallah. So what I've done to you in this 1 hour is to take you on a journey through the world of money and to show you how Dajjal is using money to achieve his objective of ruling the world. This is the end of our third session, and alhamdulillah my voice has not gone yet. We have a half an hour until 6 o'clock. At 6 o'clock we stop for 1 hour. And that stop is for me to rest my voice, okay? So if you want to come and chat with me, you're risking that I won't be able to speak in the last session. I will sit at the back of the hall and you can bring your books for me to autograph them. And we can have short conversation, but don't keep me talking for 1 hour, please. All right, we have now questions. Bismillahi awwaluhu wa akhiru. Is it okay for me as a woman to not want to have any children in this day and age due to the corruption of Western society, and instead devote my time to becoming more learned in Islam and to be on the way of Allah? In Surah Ali Imran of the Quran, the angels are taking some people into the hellfire. And the angels pause to ask them, Fima kuntum? What happened to you that you ended up in this mess? The people then respond to say, Kunna mustadafina fil ard. You see, we were living in Britain. And there's nothing else you could do in Britain. Or we were living in France. Kunna mustadafina fil ard. We were helpless. And that's why we had to act the way we did. To which the angels then respond and ask, Alam takun ardullahi wasi'ah fatuhajiru fiha? Was Allah's earth not wide, that you could have traveled in Allah's work to migrate to find a place where you would not have to betray Allah and betray the truth into the hellfire? And so they go into the hellfire. This excuse does not work. Number two, it's not for a husband and wife to sit down, after dinner and say, well, listen, I think we better have only 2 children, And we have the first one after 3 years, and then we have the second one in another 3 years later, and then finally, that's it. It's called Planned Parenthood. But that's not what is in the Quran. In the Quran, Allah says that He does the writing, not you. He does the writing, not you. He decides how many children you will have and when you will have the children. He decides. You don't believe me? Go and study the Quran. So if you attempt to take over from Him and do the writing yourself, you're going to be in trouble on Judgment Day. Let me repeat that. If you decide that you're going to take over from Him and you will do the writing yourself, on Judgment Day you're going to be in trouble. But there are circumstances in which, because of abnormal conditions, the law permits you to intervene. For example, if you were to become pregnant, then that pregnancy could endanger your life. Then the principle in our law is to choose the lesser of two evils. That you sacrifice the baby for the sake of the mother's life. So you are allowed to take steps in such a situation to abort an unborn baby. But the law decides that it has to be at a certain time. Beyond that you cannot do it. But I am not the specialist in this field. The man who is a specialist in Islamic medical ethics is Dr. Abul Fadl Mohsen Ibrahim. Send me an email and I'll put you in touch with him. What is the practical solution to avoid riba? Number one, our Prophet said, this hand is better than this hand. A janazah was brought to the Prophet for him to perform the Salatul Janazah. Janazah, it will be a dead body which has been given the washing, the ghusl, and which has been clothed. And the Salatul Janazah will be the prayer which is performed over that body before burial. So the Prophet has to perform the prayer, Salatul Janazah. He asked, did he leave any debts? They said no. He performed the prayer. Another janazah was brought for him to perform the Salatul Janazah. He asked, did he leave any debts? They said yes, meaning he left debts and did not leave enough money to pay the debts. The Prophet refused to perform the Salatul Janazah over that body because that man died with a debt. He said to his companions, you pray over him. Abu Qatada al-Ansari then said, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, O Messenger of Allah, I will pay the debt. Then the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam performed the Salatul Janazah over that body. My book on Dajjal and money, I'm working on it now, which is a revised version of my older book on riba, the prohibition of riba in the Quran. And so now give me a few months, inshallah, and this book will be ready. And in this book I have all of these ahadith. So your first step is to stay out of debt. First step, stay out of debt. It is preferable to rent an apartment than to go and buy a house. When you rent the apartment, you're paying your landlord's riba for him. Yes. When you buy the apartment, you're paying the riba yourself. This one is the lesser evil, where you're paying his riba. This one is the greater evil, because you're paying it directly to the bank. So it is preferable to rent rather than to buy a house with a bank loan on interest. The next step that you must take is never borrow money on interest. Why? The Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, I sent this message to Imran Khan, you know. I made a video and I sent it to him. I don't know, maybe he's too busy to listen to me. Yes. I was looking forward, I said, I think because this man played cricket as an honest cricketer, he didn't cheat. Yeah, we admire it. I come from the land of cricket, Trinidad, the land of Brian Lara. So I can appreciate a good cricketer who doesn't cheat. Huh? So I said, because Imran Khan played cricket in such a wonderful way, he'd make a better prime minister than all those vagabonds that were there before him. And I expected more from him. I didn't expect him to fail so quickly. No. Even Jeremy Corbyn didn't expect him to fail so quickly. Yes. So, the Prophet ﷺ cursed all four. And he said they're all equally guilty. The one who takes riba, the one who gives riba, you borrowed money in interest and you're paying the interest, the Prophet cursed you. The one who records the transaction and the two witnesses, and he said they're all equally guilty. So to go and borrow money on interest, to buy a house, to buy a car, to do business, or to make a trip to Disneyland, and now even to perform the Hajj, is to get the curse of the Prophet upon you. So avoid it. If you live with the curse of the Prophet upon you, let me tell you what are the implications. You could perform your salat, it's not going anywhere. You can give in charity, it's not going anywhere. You can fast in Ramadan, it's not going to be accepted. You can go perform the Hajj, it will not be accepted if you have the curse of a Prophet upon you. These are the things that you can do at the beginning. Somebody wrote me 1, 2, 3, 4 questions in one. What about using a bank account? Our Prophet said, when there is no escape from evil, if you turn to this side it is evil, you turn to that side it is evil. And that is the world of money today. He said you must always choose the lesser of two evils. So what is the state of riba? Our Prophet said that the time will come when you'll not be able to find a single person, not one, in all of mankind who will not be consuming riba. And whoever says he is not consuming riba, verily the dust of riba will be upon him. Verily the vapor of riba will reach him. So on the subject of money, there is no escape. So if you have a bank account, the sensible thing to do is to use your bank account as the lesser of two evils. That doesn't mean it's halal. And you do not keep in your bank account more money than you need for paying bills. That's all. Whatever other money you have, you take it out of your bank account and you put it into that which has intrinsic value. Like buy gold and silver, or you can buy apples, you can buy dates, you can buy land, you can buy animals. And when that money falls in value, your money will not. I would not have been able to attend your event if I didn't ask a friend to book the ticket. Yes, I know. We are caught now in this system. You want to get a taxi, you have to call on the phone and you got to pay. You want to buy a ticket, it has to be done electronically. We are caught in the system now. And when you are caught in the system, do not use the system to promote yourself. Stay in the system as minimally as you can be. Minimal contact with the system, as minimal as possible, so that you can say, yes, I'm choosing the the lesser evil, but I'm not profiting from it now. How does one provide for their family without contributing to riba? If you feed your children with riba money, you're putting fire in their belly. Yeah. Try your best as you can to avoid riba. How do we respond to someone who says that although riba is haram, it is beneficial to take a loan in order to invest in the country, in order to pay off the country's debts? If Allah has made something haram, no one can make it halal. However, there is the law of necessity, where if you do not have any food to eat and you are facing death by hunger, the law, the Quran tells you it is permissible for you to eat lahmul khinzir, pork, as the lesser of two evils. But there are rules and regulations concerning eating the pork. Shall I tell you? Which apply to when you want to borrow money and interest. Number one, you will eat the minimum amount of pork to stay alive. So if you fill your plate with pork, shame on you. Look at the big house, and you go back to Pindi and you're showing off a full plate of pork. You're supposed to eat the minimum to stay alive. That's the law of necessity. Number two, when you're eating the pork, you must not be enjoying it. Licking your fingers. Huh? I'm only eating this to stay alive. But you have this big house and you're licking your fingers, you're enjoying the pork. Number three, while you're eating the pork, you're constantly looking for food. And as soon as you get the food, out with the pork. But you sign a contract for 25 years of pork. Yes, that's what you did. 25 years of pork. That's not the proper application of the law of necessity at all. A man who has a wife and 10 children, nobody wants to rent an apartment to him. He prefers to rent. Yes, he prefers to rent. He doesn't want to buy on loan and interest. But with his 10 children, nobody would rent to him. Nobody. And his family going to be out in the sky, in the street. And he doesn't have anyone to help him. And this man, in order to avoid the situation of his family being on the street, he said, let me see if I can get a short-term loan on interest before I can get enough money to leave this country and go somewhere else. Okay? Here is a man who definitely has the law of necessity on his side. These people can be excused by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but not the others who lick their fingers. One more, how can we explain in the economy that money lenders don't have the risk, usury? In fact, they have the risk if a person doesn't pay except for credit on gauge, credit on gauge. How doesn't wealth circulate in the economy? Because of the riba. The bank is lending you money in a different way from me. If I have 20 pounds in my pocket, can I lend you 40? Why are you so quiet? I have only 20 pounds in my pocket, can I lend you 40? The bank has 20 pounds in its pocket and the bank lending you 200. It's called fractional reserve banking. Huh? Is that business? Or is that wholesale theft? That's how the money lender operates. I used to think that the bank was using from the 20 pounds it had to lend, until the head of the German central bank, who just retired, he explained the situation about a year or two ago. He says, no, the banks don't do that. The banks never lend you money from their coffers. No. Every time the bank lends money, the bank has to borrow from a central lending bank. You're not allowed to lend your own money. You have to borrow from them at that rate, and then you can lend at a higher rate. Where's the risk involved there? Huh? Tell me, where's the risk? I'm borrowing from him and lending to you. If you do not repay me, then I must have some collateral, that I'll seize your house, or I'll seize your car. The bank will not lend you money until there is some security. So where is the risk? Ah, yes, I know the risk. When Raja Sahab in Islamabad, and this big Nawab Sahab in Islamabad and so on, and they have friends in the bank, and they go to the bank and they borrow so many millions and millions and millions with no intention of ever repaying it. And then the bank has to say, it's a loss. The books have to show it's a loss, because those people borrowed the money with no intention of ever repaying it. It's a scam. No, don't come with this, that the banks take risk. They don't take risk. What happens if we want to purchase a property and you're unable to do so without a mortgage? What shall we do? This is the last question. I was in Long Island, and in order for me to get my American green card, I had to be the imam at the masjid. So for 1 year I was imam at the masjid in Long Island to get the green card. Then after 9/11, I didn't bother about the green card anymore. And I gave a lecture on riba. A Pakistani pediatrics surgeon who was making tons of money in Long Island came to me. He said to me, Sheikh Imran, I've been in New York for 25 years now, and no one has ever lectured on this subject of riba. 3 weeks later he came to me, he said, Sheikh Imran, all my riba, I've got rid of it. In 3 weeks he did it all. So what to do with all the money he's making? This is what he did. He started buying houses around the masjid to families who wanted to live close to the masjid. And he'd say, you put 10% and I'd put 90. So the house was $100,000 US, and this man will put 10,000 and he would put 90,000. And so now there's a partnership. The house is owned by two parties. The partnership then signed a rental agreement. That the house will be rented to the smaller party with the 10%, but at the market rental value. And that the market rental value will be checked every 3 years, because rents can go up and down. And every month that he pays the rent, 10% of the rent comes back to him as 10% owner, and 90% goes to the doctor. All taxes and all maintenance and repairs are met by both parties based upon proportion of ownership. So if we have to pay $100 in maintenance, he will pay 10 and this fellow will pay 90. Good? Then the partnership signed a second agreement that the partner who owns less has the right to buy from the partner who owns more, so that his 10% can reach 20, can reach 30, but every time, this is called equity, every time he buys from the equity of his partner, it must be bought at the market value of the property. And that value can go up and down. And at the end of the transaction, he would have bought the whole house from him. There was no riba, none. You bought less, you bought it for less money than if you bought it from the bank, because you cut out the part that the bank was going to take. And here was a system, and there were several houses right around the masjid in Long Island. Several houses were bought this way. There's a second way in which you can proceed, and that is that you get, say, 12 people and try to stay away from crooks. And each person will pay, say, £100 a month. £100 a month. And every month you'll get £1,200 every month. And those who have a greater need will come at the top of the list. And those who do not have a great need will go at the bottom of the list. So it becomes an interest-free loan from those who have to those who don't have. Okay? And if you raise the amount sufficiently and you have a sufficiently large number, maybe every month you could be buying a house. Every 2 months you could be buying a house, provided you have a sufficiently large number of people and a sufficiently large amount of money paid every month. And this company operates free from riba, except that you're using the bogus money, that's all. Okay, we now finish with the third session, and we'll now reconvene at 7 o'clock. We have Salatul Isha now, and at 7 o'clock we convene for the last session, inshallah.